Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Yes, Football at 4 every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Presented by the Inside the Birds podcast. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. Busy weekend in the NFL as training camp starts tomorrow for the Birds. And joining us to get more into it is the co-host of the Inside the Birds podcast, the one, the only, Geoff Mosher, joins us here on 97.3 ESPN and live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, wearing a lovely blue shirt. Geoff, how you doing today?
I'm great, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing well, especially considering that football is basically here at this point. And the big news over the weekend, you guys talked about it on the podcast this morning, the Eagles finally get a second cornerback. Steven Nelson is here. So what I want to ask you, Geoff, is looking at the Eagles offseason now that we are basically on the cusp of training camp. They add Steven Nelson. They add Eric Wilson. They add Anthony Harris. What does it say to you about the Eagles as they're going in the training camp with these additions this offseason on defense?
Yeah, Josh. So one thing we've talked about since the very beginning of the offseason is that the Eagles are definitely in a transition mode. They're definitely starting over with new players, younger players at certain positions. And I don't want to call it rebuilding because what they're doing is they're trying to stay competitive while they flip the roster and enter a new era under Nick Sirianni. Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie believe this. They believe you don't have to tank in the NFL. You may not have the best roster, but you want to be able to compete. And by signing a lot of players to one-year deals, which, by the way, is something they also had to do given their cap issues, some of these guys have one-year deals with a little bit of dead money and dummy years spread out. But by doing that, it fills up major holes that they had without being financially invested far down the line in any of these guys. And it enables the Eagles to go out there and compete on a week-to-week basis. Now, they may not have the best roster, when they're going up against their opponents. It may not be like when they acquired a Michael Bennett a couple of years ago because their window is open, or bringing back a Jason Peters because the window is open, but they want to give their young players like a Jalen Hurts or anybody else the best opportunity to succeed. And you can't succeed if you're losing games 24-0 and 35-0 and you don't have enough. So I think they're doing it the right way, which is you know that they're still, in many areas, they're not as probably talented as they'd like to be, but on any given Sunday, they should be able to show up and represent themselves in the city and compete.
The other thing about the Steven Nelson signing, Geoff, that's standing out to me is just because you signed him, that doesn't really still tell us anything about what this defense that Gannon's going to run. We still have no 100% certainty of exactly. We have theories, we have ideas. I know you and Adam have talked about it on the podcast about what people have told you, but there's still no 100% certainty except for one thing I know, which is we're not running the wide 9 anymore. So outside of that, I look at these signings and I say, great, we got a cornerback. Great, we got a safety. Great, we got another linebacker. But, we still might not know until week 1 in September exactly what this defense can be.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's enough clues to know that what he wants to do and what he philosophically likes to do, which is, show some cover 2, show some cover 3, blitz the linebackers, play probably a mix of zone, maybe some zone man zone, all those kind of things. But the Zimmer-esque influence in his game. But I think he comes off as smart enough to know that sometimes you're limited. I don't want to say limited, but sometimes you do what your personnel dictates you're allowed to do. So you're not going to blitz certain guys if they're not good blitzers, or if they're just, you're not going to have certain guys in coverage if they're not good in coverage. You're going to try to avoid that. So I'm sure he's going to have to, he's going to have a couple of weeks of training camp to figure out what he wants to do, what his players can do, and if there's any moves they can make as a team at the end of camp to bring in some players who can do what he wants to do.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast joining us for Football at 4 at Geoff Mosher NFL on Twitter, as the Eagles are counting down the hours till reporting for training camp at this point as we are here on a Monday. Geoff, what do you want Eagle fans to know about Steven Nelson? Is there something specifically about him that you say, listen, Eagle fans, this is what you need to understand about who this guy is?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two things. One positive, one negative, right? Well, the negative we'll start with first. And it's not really a negative, but I mean, he's a free agent corner a couple of days before training camp. He's going to make around $3 million base with a chance to make about a little more than $4 million. Okay. So while some people are heralding this as the final move you make before you really have this great defense or complete defense, or now you're in to go, no, he's a good corner, a 2 to 3 corner. Now he looks a lot better in midnight green because he's the second best corner on the team just by walking into the NovaCare complex. But he's not necessarily a star by any stretch of the means. He only has 7 career interceptions over 4 or 5 years, so he's not a ball hawk. But he is a guy who's going to be better than any alternative, theoretically, that they would have had at that other spot. Now, the good thing really is that in the Inside the Birds platform, we have a great show that you know of that Quentin Michael and Jason Avant do called Q&A, former Eagles. And Jason Avant was a wide receiver with the Chiefs at the end of his career, and that happened to be the first year of Steven Nelson's career. So he was able to diagnose what Steven does best. Now, Steven's probably improved since his rookie year, but just in general, Jason Avant recalls a player who was very tough, very scrappy. He almost described him. He didn't say it, but the way we used to describe Sheldon Brown. I don't know if Steven's as talented as Sheldon Brown was, but the same kind of style of play where I'm going to get my hands on you. I'm going to be scrappy. I'm going to be tough. You might beat me one play, but I'm going to come back at you the next. You want that demeanor from your cornerbacks. You want them to forget easily and very quickly the bad plays and then come back and make good plays. So that's the kind of guy he's been, very tough, very scrappy. It'll be interesting because, if you remember last year, Travis Fulgham ate him up pretty good in that Eagles-Steelers game. So I know a lot of Eagles fans originally had that kind of impression of Steven Nelson because they remember Fulgham really beating him. But Fulgham was playing at a really high level at that time, and it's not like he was roasting Steven Nelson. He was making a lot of good contested catches against Steven Nelson. So, again, Steven's going to be there. He may not always make the play, but he's going to be there, and he's going to be physical and tough.
So now looking ahead to training camp, Geoff, obviously we're keeping an eye on a lot of things heading into training camp, but the side effect of Steven Nelson is now the focus from the outside corner moves inside. Right now it's Avonte Maddox and theoretically versus Scott, the guy they got from the Jags for the inside competition. So now we move our attention inside on the defense. Give us your perspective on that.
Yeah, that's exactly that. One of the biggest side benefits of bringing in Steven Nelson is not only did you have yourself a good starter with experience to play outside, but now you can finally take Avonte Maddox, play him where he belongs, which is at the slot corner. As you mentioned, he'll have some battles from Josiah Scott, who they brought in from Jacksonville, another guy who was a 4th-round pick and who had good speed, but his size is better suited for the inside slot. And now you can kind of have a little bit of a competition there. Craig James will be in the mix. I mean, you pretty much know your top 4 or 5 corners. It's going to be Slay. It's going to be Nelson. It's going to be Maddox. It's going to be McPherson because it was a 4th-round pick. So that's 4 right there. And then you'll probably keep 5 corners. So then it's kind of a competition between Scott, Craig James. We'll see if Michael Jacquet with that nice size can kind of come in and make some big strides from last year and compete. But at least your top 4 guys are known, unless somebody can really throw Avonte Maddox out of that slot. Or, Josh, unless they figure, let's say Scott plays really well or James, they feel like they have good interior slot corners aside from Avonte. They may feel Avonte could move back to safety because he played really well, I thought, at safety as a rookie. And right now they're not very deep at safety, and McLeod, we'll have to see how he starts off training camp, probably on PUP, but that at least gives them the optionality of Avonte to maybe move him around a little bit.
Geoff, the other big thing about looking forward to about training camp, I talked about this earlier on the show, and that is last year, guys like Kavon Wallace, Jalen Reagor, you had all these rookies come in, no regular offseason, no preseason. So how big do you think it's going to be for those guys now to come in and get some legitimate development this offseason and what that could mean for them this upcoming season?
It can only help. Although, you always look at things on a case-by-case basis. I would have told you last year, right, every single rookie is going to be behind the 8 ball because of how different OTAs were and how different training camp was, and how much little time they got on the field compared to their, rookies from years past. But darn if Justin Jefferson didn't go out and have 1,400 receiving yards, and Joe Burrow came out looking like he was the next whatever you want, Aaron Rodgers for the first 5 or 6 weeks there before he tore his ACL. So some rookies, it didn't seem to impact them at all. Other rookies, you probably could say, man, if that guy just had more reps, right, and more ability to get involved, then he would have had a better year. I think with Jalen Reagor, it was really all about the injuries that set him back. I mean, he had missed training camp time with the shoulder injury, and then he missed several weeks after the finger surgery, and that really, I think, set him back more than anything. And obviously, Jalen Hurts not having all of the reps as the number one quarterback, he handled himself fairly well for a kid who was put in that position. And you would think that the time that he's got now, assuming he's going to be the starting quarterback going forward, will be only benefit him.
Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast, joining us football at 4. Inside the Birds dropped this morning, the latest edition. Go out, check out all of Jeff and Adam's latest insights and reporting on the Eagles. Of course, subscribe, download, do all those great things because you want to keep it tuned to them all Eagles season long as we start training camp tomorrow. Now, Jeff, speaking of training camp starting tomorrow, we know that all the rookies are now signed. Landon Dickerson, he's in the building, so everybody's signed, everyone's locked up. And speaking of Dickerson, what do you expect from him? Because he is coming off an injury last year that ended his college football season. So, at least for me, making an assumption based on what we've seen from other NFL players, I'm assuming he's not going to be, competing for the starting job day one at training camp of anything. So, what is the realistic expectation for him heading into training camp?
Well, first we have to find out if he's healthy enough and medically cleared to be able to practice. If he's medically cleared to practice, I think you're going to see a guy who gets treated carefully. So he may not get as many reps as other rookies. But I do think what you'll see is him being, when he does practice, if he's in there on 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, you're probably going to see him get snaps at both guard and center on the second and third teams or what have you. They like him in both positions. You can make an argument that he'd be Jason Kelsey's replacement. I think you can make a better argument that you'd want him at left guard and Seumalo to be Kelsey's replacement, because there's a lot of advantages to being able to put a 340-pound left guard next to a potentially 360-pound left tackle and just bulldoze the way on the left side of the line. And that even ignores the fact that you got a darn good right side of your offensive line. But we're really kind of looking in the head into the future for Landon Dickerson, so you don't even know what the rest of the line is going to look like. But plus, Isaac Seumalo is a little bit more fleet of foot as far as lateral movement and athleticism in that way, whereas Landon Dickerson's kind of a road grading mauler, right? Not to take away or give to anyone, but sometimes you want your more fleet of foot, nimble guy at center. So we'll see what happens, but he's going to take snaps at both, and I know the team thinks he can play both positions.
Jeff, I've been asked today by a couple people about what the deal is with Zach Ertz. We know he's been in the building working out. He's going to be at training camp tomorrow. And I feel like there's an argument to be made both ways about him. There's an argument made to keep him, and there's an argument to be made for him to move on. So, what is your analysis of the Zach Ertz situation with training camp starting tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to make an argument to keep him that involves all the context that you would need to have a real debate about it. And part of the context is he makes $8.5 million. The team is already having a contract extension talk with Dallas Goedert, so it's clear that they want Dallas Goedert to be their guy going forward. And it's really hard to be the team that tried and successfully did for many people, sold fans on the idea of taking a backup quarterback in the second round for economic purposes because the price of backups had gotten too high, and then go and spend $8.5 million on a backup tight end. I mean, if that's not mixed messaging, I don't know what is. So I'm still of the belief that Zach Ertz is not going to be with this team very long. I'm fascinated by what happens when he shows up at training camp, because the last thing the Eagles can do is afford to have him practice and get hurt and be out for a long time and ruin the trade. And then he can't even play for you. Let's say something it's severe, which can always happen. Then you're caught. Then there's $8.5 million to a backup tight end who's not even playing for you. So if he shows up, I think they're going to have to treat him like he's got bubble wrap on if they can. And it'll be a really interesting dynamic. I just have a hard time right now to sit here envisioning Zach Ertz showing up and then getting right in there in team drills, 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, and taking his place as the number 2 tight end on the team.
A couple of items I'll hit on with you, Geoff. Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. Also, check out Geoff's latest on who will be the Eagles' offensive MVP in 2021 over at InsideTheBirds.com. Him and Andrew Check will continue their training camp preview series. Geoff, obviously impacting not directly the Eagles, but kind of like in that sphere is the news that came out this morning about Deshaun Watson. If you combine the Mortensen and Pelissaro reports, basically it looks like the Texans won 3 first-round picks and 2 players is basically what we're surmising here, which is interesting because that is literally what you and Adam talked about for months, which would be what the Eagles would be giving up if they were to get Watson. But the problem is, as I've been explaining to people throughout the day, Geoff, we still have no answer about what is going on with these 22 civil suits and the fact that you mentioned inconsistent messaging. The NFL itself has inconsistent messaging. They have 10 years of no precedent when it comes to guys and off the field. So if you're an NFL team and you're going to give up 3 first-round picks and 2 players, are you really going to do that for a guy that may or may not play this year?
Well, I'll just tell you from an Eagles standpoint, they're not going to make a move for Deshaun Watson unless they have thoroughly vetted it through their own. They're not just going to rely on the NFL, not just going to rely on what they read in the newspapers. They've got they've got a very good legal counsel. They've got very good information gatherers, and those people will be the one with big, thick notebooks of reports to Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman to make that decision. So if the Eagles go ahead and get Deshaun Watson, you would have to think it's because they were satisfied by the information that they have that I'm not privy to, that you're not privy to, that many people who are just casually sitting at home wondering what's going on are not privy to. So that's a big part of it. I think it's really hard to get a feel for it knowing that he's not going on the commissioner's exempt list because, as I understand it, if he's not on the exempt list, it's because the commissioner has not yet found enough reason or information to put him to say that there's been a violation of the personal conduct policy, which is a hard comprehension compared to what we've seen out there as far as either the Sports Illustrated story or just the fact that 22 women have come forward. So I stay in my lane, Josh. I know what I don't know, and there's a lot in this I don't know that I'm anxious and eager to find out. But I do agree it's a very strange scenario, and in some ways, the Texans find themselves with Deshaun Watson, kind of like how I just mentioned with the Eagles and Zach. I mean, he reports. What do you do with the guy? You cannot sit there and practice him. You have no plans to have him on your team. You want to trade him. You can't get him hurt. He's not on the exempt list, so you can't even say he's here, but he's exempt from playing. So it almost seems like it creates that urgency for the Texans to get a deal done now in the next few days or so.
Yeah, and also the other side of it is what his quarterback coach, Quincy Avery, by the way, who's the quarterback coach of Jalen Hurts as well. He went on Adam Schefter's podcast and said, oh, by the way, he's being traded Sunday. Well, Sunday was yesterday. So whatever insight Quincy Avery had gets thrown out the window. So obviously this whole situation is fluid with Watson, especially considering the fact that, you know what, Geoff, even if he gets traded to any team, what happens then? He's got to learn a whole new offense. He's going to a whole new situation. Literally training camp start tomorrow. It's not like he's going to have a whole offseason with a team here.
No, he won't have a full offseason, but I would think a full training camp would be enough. I mean, he's been in the league long enough. The Eagles aren't, to my knowledge, with Nick Sirianni, aren't going to run some kind of version of the West Coast offense that's never been seen before. Almost everything nowadays has roots in a West Coast and a spread. So, and good coaches tend to be able to adjust their playbooks to what their best players do. So I don't think that will be that much of an issue. But of course, if you want it, you're right, Josh. If you want Deshaun Watson and you starting to feel like there's not going to be a suspension, or if there is a suspension, it's not going to be 6 games. Maybe it's 4, maybe it's 3 or 4 and gets appealed to, I don't know. Then all of a sudden, you probably feel the urgency to bring him into your training camp and get the ball rolling.
Geoff, one more before I let you go. Obviously not directly impacting the Eagles, but still an NFL story is, so as you were coming on, Adam Schefter reporting that Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are working on a deal that will keep him in Green Bay for this season, but now he has voidable years after this year. So now it looks like the Devontae Adams tweet, or should I say Instagram post, became a tweet about the last dance with him and Rodgers is coming to fruition. So if Aaron Rodgers is in Green Bay is, they're pretty darn good. You got the league MVP coming in there for at least one more year. And obviously he's off the trade market, so nobody is going to trade for him, at least this year.
Absolutely. It looks like that, and we'll see what happens in the future. I just think that's a good thing that Aaron Rodgers is going back to the Packers. The drama has been interesting, but it feels like Aaron Rodgers should go back to the Packers. They're a very good team. He's got a chance to win a Super Bowl. Maybe it'll become a great, quote-unquote, last dance type of season with him and Devontae Adams playing Pippen and Jordan in that role. I don't know. But, it was going to be look, I get Green Bay saying that we're not going to be, or Brian Gutekunst saying, I'm not going to be the guy that trades Aaron Rodgers. If he retires, he retires, but I'm not trading Aaron Rodgers. And it looks like it's going to wind up there. It looks like the power play on Aaron's side is not going to work.
Well, at least he got the years voided after this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's got, it's a consolation prize. It's, you're not stuck here, but you're here for one more year at least, if you're okay with that. And it seems like he's at least agreeing to that, which makes next year very interesting, Jeff, because if we go through a year and Deshaun Watson still isn't traded and Aaron Rodgers is going to be traded next offseason or be a free agent even this next offseason, that makes next year very, very interesting, especially considering if the Eagles don't make a trade, they could have 3 draft picks next year. There's a lot of interesting conversations that are going to come after this year for sure.
Well, certainly that's the way the Eagles have played this whole offseason. Give themselves as many options to be aggressive as they want, and if not now, a year from now.
At Geoff Mosher on Twitter. The Inside the Birds podcast is live right now with the latest on the Eagles. And, of course, I know you're dropping the new schedule coming up soon, right, Jeff?
Oh, that's right. We're going to have a great schedule for the fall, some new shows. Looking forward to it.
So keep it all tuned. Inside the Birds, at Inside Birds on Twitter. And Geoff Mosher joins us every Monday and Wednesday on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff, I believe Mike Gill will be back on Wednesday, so you will be talking to him then.
All right. We'll look forward to it, Josh. Have a good one. Doing a great job.